Whenever you're ready, sir.
I need to write it on the calendar.
Yeah, I'll give you an addendum.
11. Sunday, 11.
Yes, you do. This was from this. Addendum from the second meeting. So yes, we do need to appoint a budget chair and a vice chair. With you, greenhouse. Yes, with you.
Who was? I will.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, it's 5:33, let's call this special meeting to order.
Chair.
You have a quorum,
He opens it.
so
Opens it.
budget chair, Jenny remembers you.
Wait, am I stuck being it? Was this elect, I could chair and like, well, pledge allegiance there.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we need to elect a budget chairperson and a vice chairperson. Who wants to be? Oh, okay, I'm taking nominations.
I'll nominate Linda as budget chair.
I nominate Karen.
I nominate Karen. I'm still stuck as
I'll
chair.
second the nomination for Barry Chair.
So what do we what? Okay. Okay, well, we vote for Karen to be the chairperson?
How can I be a chairperson? No, I'm not even on the board. You know,
Yes, it is. It's the budget, just like your budget. It's just the budget.
we didn't just elect you to the board, we promise.
Okay, now we need a vice chairperson?
I nominate Kathy.
I didn't even.
I'll second that. I second
I
that.
third. Everybody vote?
All in favor?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand.
How about again?
Not the left hand, you did to me. Not the left hand.
Any other hand?
I need to.
Linda? Linda, would you please write down the vice chair and vice chair so we have Charmin get it correctly in the notes? I'll transfer that to her at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first year I showed up, I wasn't.
Let's see, R-I-N.
You should come down, see how it works. Budget line, so they need me chair.
And you have. Over, but it's like, this is happening too fast.
Yeah, that's not, oh, I said, I returned.
And I'm what? You're what? You're the chairperson?
Sorry, Karen.
What?
What's your last name?
Of the budget committee.
Karen, right. Mary Nancy. Mary and Nancy, Mary, okay. Very good. Okay.
I can't help who you want. It's
Hammer.
It's
Hammer. Yeah, no, Hammer is always how I say it. Yeah. Very good.
And who gets this?
I'll start with it.
Well, I think the rest.
I get till.
One of them wants to just
3-hour meeting.
Let me have.
We start at 7 o'clock and we're usually done about 8:20.
Oh, why
Then we go downstairs.
You got to fall asleep.
I know, that's what you said. Yeah.
Did you have the name for the chair and the vice chair?
You were working there too.
Did you get the name and address of the chair and the vice
I got
chair?
the name, I didn't get the address, whatever.
I'll work on it. I'll work on it.
Did Charmin need the address or the email address?
Just the name. We should have everybody else's contact information already submitted by the board members who brought them in.
Okay.
We just need the first and last names. Thank you, Gary.
So Karen, that means as the chair, then you take over the agenda from here. So Karen, would you point out where we are at on the agenda to start the next topic?
We are at action. Number 6.
Did you already do community comments?
So,
Are you community? No, okay.
So, I will just go ahead and take this. So, my name's Rachel Amos. I'm the business manager
Finally.
for Reedsburg School District.
You made
So the, purpose of the budget meeting is to, allow for community comments and review the budget as a group so that, we can hopefully get an approved budget referred to the board for adoption in June so that we can legally start business again on July 1st. So, the first meeting has to do with the budget presentation. Hopefully we can finish in one meeting, but if not, then, the bulk of what tonight will be, we'll start with the budget message read by the budget officer, who is also the superintendent. And then once he finishes that, then I will do my presentation and then we will have some discussion and maybe comments if we have any. Any questions for me right now? Okay, everybody done?
So on page 3 of your budget document with the lighthouse drawing in the top left corner. 2023-2024 fiscal year budget message. Give everybody just a moment for page 3. Written document, yep. Okay, the 2023-2024 school budget is designed to meet the overall needs of the students in the Reedsport School District. It is presented as required by ORS 294.305 through 294.520. In developing this budget, the school district continues a focus on the stated mission, empowering individuals to reach their full potential and achieve their goals. This budget is based on the first year of the 23-25 state school fund allocation of $9.9 billion with a 49-51 split. The extended ADMW 4th district decreased to $833.65 for the 23-24 school year, for an overall state school fund allocation estimate of $6,088,008. Revenue estimates for the general fund project our resources at $10,697,362 for the coming fiscal year, as compared to $11,006,296 for the current year. This represents a decrease of $308,934, of which $264,089 can be attributed to the state school fund revenue decrease related to declining enrollment. The budget proposed tonight will allow the district to continue pursuit of its continuous improvement plan while working to maintain a strong ending fund balance and build reserves as directed by the school board. As we observe the federal stimulus funds sunsetting, we remain committed to supporting our staff and the students of our community with a well-rounded budget. As technology inventory continues to increase, so has the need to maintain and service this equipment, both for longevity of use and educational best practices. The focus of promoting post-secondary outcomes for students through alignment of K-12 programming and instruction continues to be a priority. Reserve funds, such as those for technology, facilities, instructional materials, and vehicles are included in this budget, as significant increases in costs to these types of items and future upgrades need to be anticipated while finances are stronger. Continued support for the social, emotional, mental health of our students and staff also remains a focus. This budget is founded on the fiscal development of our district programs and provision to ensure academic and social success of our students and empowerment of our staff. It is educationally sound, fiscally responsible, and in compliance with statute. I appreciate the support, participation, and input provided by the community, families, district staff, and school board members, in the collaborative budget presented. So motive B.
Thanks. Go ahead. Because we have a couple of new people, as we usually do, I'm just gonna touch base on what the budget committee is for and why we do a budget. So the budget is the district's financial roadmap for the year. It allocates our expenditures and puts together the spending plan based on the revenue that we estimate to come in for the next fiscal year. And why is the budget required by law? Well, taxpayers fund school districts, and so there has to be some accountability and transparency in the spending plan. So we have transparency and accountability through uniform procedures, independent committee members such as yourselves, public meetings such as this one, and public participation should we have public that wants to come and participate. Okay. What is the role of the budget committee? Well, you're going to review the budget document. You've already received the budget message. You're going to provide opportunity for public input, should there be that opportunity. Public can make suggestions to the budget committee on specific line items as they relate to goals and programs. You need to approve the budget and refer it to the district board for adoption. And as a reminder, the budget committee, just like the board, is subject to public meeting laws. What? Did we skip one? Or did I mess up? Oh, there it is. Okay. No, okay, good. I messed up. So what does the budget committee not do? The budget committee cannot set salaries or benefits. Those are contractual obligations. The budget committee does not set staffing. That is up to the superintendent and administration. The budget committee does not decide whether or not a service or program should be provided. And the budget committee does not make district policies. That's up to the board to do that. So the board of directors does the oversight and governance. The budget committee takes the information presented to make determinations on the budget being approved. But programs, goals, staffing, all of that are set throughout the year through negotiations by the board and through administration. Any questions for me so far? Okay. So can the committee change the budget? The committee has the authority to change the superintendent's proposed budget within the limitations specified on the previous slide. So after the committee refers the proposed budget to the board for adoption, the board actually has another opportunity to change the budget before it's adopted. So if any changes that the board decides to make in June within 10%, they can be done at that meeting. Anything above the 10% of any fund has to go to a supplemental budget meeting at a later date. Okay, so this budget document contains funds 100, which is the general fund, special revenue funds, which are the 200 funds. There's a slew of them. 300 debt service fund, which contains the debt service for the PERS bond and the general obligation bond that the district currently has. 400 funds, which are capital and building funds. We have a capital projects fund, and we also have a seismic activity fund for seismic work that's continuing. ODE requires us to have that separately and track it separately. And then our 700 fund, in our case, is a 750 fund. It's a fiduciary fund. Those are scholarship and foundational funds that the board actually doesn't have governance over, but we're required to maintain the resources through the budget. So our projected revenue by fund, general fund, $10,697,362, as John referred to. Our special revenue funds contain $4,218,409. Debt service is $1,777,830. Capital and building is $2,425,000, and scholarship funds are $240,695. This slide contains just a breakdown of the general fund revenue. And so, basically it's what is on page, oh yeah, I forgot your guys didn't number appropriately. So So the general fund revenue page is the first one as you get into the budget. For some reason, it didn't like printing the budget document for you guys. It wouldn't number the pages for me consistently for your documents, but when I updated the header for mine, it worked fine. So I apologize. It was not like personal. So as you can see, the state school fund is the largest portion of our revenue for the general fund at a little over $6 million. Property taxes, a little over 2.4. And then we have a $1.8 million beginning fund balance for the rollover. The rest of the funding are pretty small resources. Okay, the next slide contains our general fund expenditures. This is our salaries at almost 3.4 million in the general fund. Benefits at a little over 2.5 million. And then our purchase services at a little over 3.2 million. Those are the bulk of our expenditures in the general fund. Purchase services we'll get into in a slide later, but we have some programs that have significant dollars attached to them, and our purchase services have gone up the last few years pretty dramatically. Okay, next slide. So our expenditures by category. These are object codes 100 and 200 in a budget. Our 100 objects are for salaries, 200 objects are the benefits. This accounts for 55% of our general fund budget. It's actually down a little bit from last year.
How is that percentage shift?
It's 2% decrease. Okay, next slide. This is the 300 object codes purchase services. As I said, it's gone up pretty dramatically in the last few years. The bulk of which is because a lot of our services, our specialty services, come from ESD. So we have speech services, we have nursing services, school psychology services, business services, human resources, those types of things. I've stayed pretty steady in my referees, utilities, postage, fuel for the buildings, to heat the buildings and so forth. Those are all purchase services. Okay. Our supplies and materials, just under $300,000. Any of our classroom supplies, computers, consumables, any of our peripherals for computers, these are all purchased, or supplies and materials. This is 3% of our general fund budget. And next slide, we have no capital outlay in our general fund once again this year. That's for purchasing equipment, large dollar equipment, or vehicles, anything of that nature. And then we have our dues and fees. This is for bank fees, for referee costs, memberships to different professional organizations. This is again 2% of our general fund budget. And lastly, we have our $1 million contingency and unappropriated ending fund balance that we project in the year with. Okay, so that's the nuts and bolts of the general fund. Going through the budget and comparing it to last year, I picked out the major changes that I thought would be significant for our discussion. So I know you guys don't have the page numbers, or at least not very many of them if they're in there, but page 13 was the general fund one with the revenue, the first one that I pointed out. And so this says a decrease of $308,934 between the current year and next year. The bulk of that is the state school fund decrease, which was almost $250,000 between the current year and next year. Pages 15, 17, and 19. So this is when we get into our general fund instructional services. So I don't know if you have any of those pages at all. Okay, yeah, okay, good. So I'm looking at FTE on those pages. So at the top of each of those pages, it shows the salaries, and then it shows the FTE next to the salary. And you'll notice that there's a decrease in those FTEs related to those salaries on all three of the pages. So we're talking elementary instruction, middle school instruction, and high school instruction. So based on where positions were changed, and funded out of for the current year and where the resources are for going into next year, our FTE has decreased in those areas. And the reason why is because we're using federal and state grants and special revenue funds to support those positions. Those positions aren't gone, they're just not in the general fund at this time. So there's a decrease there and an increase in our special revenue funds. Page 25, there's a SPED license FTE increase of 1. And we have an additional position posted for a SPED teacher. We always need SPED support. If you look at where Karen was looking at our ADMW earlier and seeing our IEP cap and how far we're exceeded over that, we have a significant caseload in the district.
Is it a teacher or director?
It's a teacher at the position in the budget right now. It's just a teacher that's elected. Okay, so page 32 is nursing service increase. This is one of those purchase services that comes from South Coast ESD. An ESD's responsibility is to spend at least 90% of their state school fund money and their property taxes on school district services. And so South Coast ESD has what's called a tier 2 service plan, where the allocations to each district go to them being allowed to purchase a menu of different services. So those allocations change based on what our enrollment is and what the allocations are. Some of this is related to service increases. We're adding more services, but some of it has to do with lower allocations of that ESD money, that menu money. So we had 2 nurses in one in each school building this year, but we only had to pay for 1 out of our pocket by check. The rest was the allocations from our menu services from ESD that paid for it. So there's an increase on page 32. That's an update to reflect the school nurse at each building. So it looks like it's doubled, because it has. It's just that we have more service needs and lower allocations, so we're having to pay more out of our actual budget. Page 34, speech service increase. That's the same reasoning behind it. I didn't spell allocations right. I apologize for that. So we have more ALS students. ALS is adaptive life skills. We have more student slots that we're ordering for next year than what we're paying for right now. So as our allocations decrease, we have to pay more out of our general fund budget.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How many speech pathologists do you have? So is the one
That we employ or that we
have in the district?
We contract 1 out of the ESD
okay.
between both buildings.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, next slide. Okay, so here's a few pieces of information that I wanted to point out based on questions that we've had throughout the year at budget meetings and related to the budget tonight. So our special revenue funds FTE increased from 21.9623 in the current year to 33.57 in the proposed budget. So that is an 11.6 FTE decrease to the general fund. The concern with that is that 11 of those FTE are currently charged to ESSER funding, which sunsets at the end of the 23-24 fiscal year. So we will be having conversations and hoping that the legislature starts doing some work so that we have the adequate funding to support the staff to continue the programs that we have. The May revenue forecast is due out tomorrow, so there's still some uncertainty on what the actual number that we will end up with for our state school fund. They're projecting, as they have for the last 2 years, a sharp increase in the May revenue forecast, which will encourage the legislature to put more into the state school fund allocation. They're really hoping to get to at least 10.1 billion and hopefully 10.3 billion.
So roll-up costs for the state of Oregon would have been at 10.3 billion. And that's the advocacy number. Every time we talk to our legislature, we hear 10.3 billion in the state school fund. Does 10.3 billion address the 11 FTE that we would need?
It would address probably half. But if we continue with full funding with the student investment account and high school success, that gives us extra leeway for supporting positions as well.
How much actually will?
It depends on the revenue forecast. Yeah, so, like the high school success and Measure 98 is based on, you know, our corporate activity tax. And so depending on what those numbers are that come in, there's a percentage that they apply to high school success. And it has increased each year since they started it. And lastly is our debt service fund. I mentioned the PERS bond and the general obligation bond earlier. So we have 5 years of payments remaining on our PERS bond. There are balloon payments for 4 of those 5 years, as is typical in bonds of that nature. So I want to point that out because that number is going to continue to grow in the 315 fund, but also wanted to offer some assurance that I've been aware for the last 5 years that I've been assigned to the district of those balloon payments and have been building up the reserve to get us to a spot where we don't have to increase significantly in this debt service fund and our transfers out to that debt service fund each year. So we are on a course to maintain the same level, if not a little bit less, into that fund for the 4 of the 5 years we have remaining. In the last year, that reserve will pay for the final year.
What happens after that bond? Will you do the bond or something?
You can do a new bond. That's something that the board will probably want to look at. If interest rates are what they are right now, then I would say it would not be a good idea for sure. But, you know, if the interest rates get down to where they were 2 years ago and we're looking at like a 2% or less, then that would be something you would want to pursue, because if you're getting in at a low number and the market tanks and interest rates go up, then you're actually winning out because the PERS liability is going to be affected more by the market than what your bond payment is. So it will offer you a discount on the portion that you pay. So then and then we have 10 years remaining on the general obligation bond. And I bring this one up because Carrie was asking about that. So the general obligation one is the one that is the taxpayer funded one. So we have 10 years remaining on that. Looking at the documents related to that bond, I believe when we get to 7 years remaining, that we can pursue possibly refinancing to add more bond amount so they can buy back the last 7 years, and then we can incur debt if it's favorable. But yeah, we have 10 full years left on that, and that,
At the 7th year?
I'm sorry,
What year?
7
year?
7 years remaining.
Oh, with 7 years from, okay, so the
Yes.
3rd year.
Yes.
From now.
Mhm. And that increase is approximately 3% per year, and that goes right into our tax levy that we put into the budget every year. So it doesn't affect what, we don't have to transfer money to the general fund from that. It's just part of our tax levy. So are there questions for me? That's the last slide.
Okay, I have a dumb question.
Okay.
It goes back to nursing, because that's a profession. So we have a proposed 23-24 budget of $421,000 for nursing.
Yes.
You said that doubles because of the shifting money from, sorry, that again?
So we actually have 3 nurses. So we have a 1-to-1 nurse that we pay for. There's a school nurse at the elementary school and a school nurse at the high school. Those have been there all year long, but we had to increase our budget because we basically have a credit of a certain dollar amount every year at the ESD. And so when they bill us for services, we use that credit to pay down our services, and then any remaining dollars we have to pay out of our pocket. So
What are services, if not just the employee's wage? What else are we, I mean, what other services are being utilized?
So the cost of the service is their wages and benefits, and then if they have any specific membership dues that go with their profession or mileage, I mean, the incidentals part of that, it's pretty insignificant. But you're looking at like the overall picture of the nursing, the group of nurses and the administration of that. And then they break it down by how many orders are placed for each of those services and divvy that dollar amount up. So if you're buying a certain number of FTE, then you're paying that FTE on that service.
That's not market rate. That's that's not market rate.
Oh,
That's
no.
what
Yeah.
like, why is it so much higher than the market rate?
Oh, it's not higher than market rate.
Oh, it is.
For 3 nurses?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not in public education because we have PERS. If we were going to hire a nurse, a private nurse, and we were a private industry, yes, it would be above market rate. But any employee that is employed in public education, you are required to pay PERS on. So our
Give me an example.
32% of somebody's salary goes to PERS. And so you're paying $1 plus 32 cents for just PERS alone. Any workers' comp, insurance costs, any of the associated payroll costs, just like if we have our own employees. So it's roughly 43% for this district for employee costs on top of salary.
Which makes sense.
So we need to hire cheaper nurses.
Careful.
You can look at and see if that would be favorable based on the costs. I mean, it would be similar. I don't know if you would be able to save money or not, because we also have the same HRA plan at South Coast CSD that you guys do here. So it's just weighing the difference in the PERS costs and the insurance costs. The salaries are probably going to be pretty much the same.
So these nurses come through, our South Coast VSD.
And you would have the same type of incidental expenses that go along with it as well. If we were a private, it would be a little bit different story.
But they're contracted for 9 months out of the year, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And they're only
I
paid for
would
9
love
months
to
a year.
see the breakdown on that. I would love to see an actual breakdown on that. I really would. It's just very curious to me.
Sure.
Yep, I mean, it doesn't have to be a part of this. I trust you and I trust the processes that we're doing, but I would love to see that. Sure, that is something that makes me go.
Well, anytime we're talking about payroll costs on top of stuff, that's something that people are like, what?
What the? Well,
Yeah.
I've just seen, I understand the increase prior to 23, but yeah, I mean, it's just sort of stunning.
Well, the difference is we were paying almost the same amount of money for those same 3 nurses. It just looks more significant because we have other services that we are increasing on. So I could have split the budget and said, we're going to keep the nursing one the same and, increase this one a little bit.
No, that one is not the one it's the, yeah,
I understand what you're saying.
it's the 22 to 23.
Yeah. And there was only 2 nurses.
What's the percentage of benefits you pay?
It's around 43% if somebody is a tier 1, tier 2 employee.
Who's Carl Perkins?
Carl Perkins. I don't know who he is exactly, but Carl Perkins is a federal grant that we received as part of a consortium. We received a dollar amount every year, and it has to do with like CTE type purchases for equipment and professional development. It's a federal grant.
On your life skills program, it's gone from 527, 821 to 835, 77. What's the rationale for that?
So it's similar to nursing. So we do have more seats, more slots that are in our order for this year. But basically, like I said, we have a slew of services that we purchase, and then we have the credits that go against it. And so instead of breaking the budget down by the 12 different pieces of those orders that we have, I use the credits to pay off the other 9 and then put money into speech services and ALS and nursing so that we can pay those straight across, because that has to do with our maintenance of effort. And I want to make sure that I'm in control of the maintenance of effort for the district and not the ESD.
That is-
This doesn't.
Minutes of effort will get us into hot water quicker than anything. So MOE maintenance is critical.
So this doesn't include the same 35, doesn't include the nursing fees. This is separate. This is strictly like.
Yeah, so the life skills, nursing that is done in the life skills program is included. It's not separate. We don't have to pay separate for that.
Okay.
And like feeding and OGCOM and any of those specialty services that are in the adaptive life skills program, that is all part of the adaptive life skills cost. Okay, so if we have students that are not in that program and need those services, then it's a different, it costs extra.
Okay, so relate that with the nursing services certificate that there's nursing services for these students, and I understand why, but I just try and get it right in my head as to the nursing services separate. Sure. But again, there's nursing services involved in life skills.
Yeah, so the 3 nurses that the school district has are not nurses that work in the life skills program at all. So there is a certain percentage of nursing that is part of the life skills program. So they come in and do the trainings or, like if there's any feeding protocols, things like that. So the 2 school nurses are full-time nurses that assess and do whatever they need to do at the school districts, at the buildings themselves, not in the adaptive life skills program. It's general ed. And then we have a one-to-one nurse, and there's a specific student or a couple of students that are assigned that one-to-one nurse that are not part of the adaptive life skills. It's completely separate.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So the nursing services in the adaptive life skills is like your minimal input, like feeding protocol, and those types of things, not sitting with a student at all times or half of the day or whatever.
An actual registered nurse is required for that?
Yeah.
So did you say there's 2 nurses in the nursing services? Or
We paid for three this year, yeah. I mean, we did for the current year also, but it was only about. And part of it is also a shell game, we're like, okay, well, one of the nurses was paid for out of student investment account this year, and we changed the plan and how we wanted to have things paid for, and so we have other positions in student investment account, and so we have to move one of the nurses out to the general fund. I say shell game, I'm joking. It's like, I mean, that's basically what it is. You're just trying to figure out where the funding best fits for the plans that you have in place, because most of our large grants have a budget tool that we have to do, a plan that we have to submit for how the money is going to be spent. And so if there's not enough money for all of those things, then we move it to the general fund or what have you.
Part of the consideration in how we budget against plans is what are the plans requiring? There is enough change in what ODE requirements are, the type of plan that gets written, and where we're supposed to direct our funding or dedicate our funding. So we may use the allocated dollars in the plan one way so that we demonstrate effort to appease the government, which is the shell game that Rachel says we'll have to cover that item that we were paying for anyway through other monies. It's the same thing happening in the schools, and getting the ODE to accept our reports and be off our backs is a little bit of what the money moving has to be about. Compliance.
So when you say you move it into the general fund, where is it coming out of? Where in the budget would these have been previously?
In Fund 251, which would have been the student investment account, there was one nurse that was budgeted in there, and so that's a special revenue fund. Student investment account, Fund 251.
Where's the bad?
I didn't get that far. Okay.
Should we carry on?
Yes, please.
Let's do it.
Other questions?
Under 237, 5 transition programs, why is next year's that been jumped up $20,000?
So Fund 237 is a grant, it's a reimbursement grant. And so there's more of the allocation that is associated with that. So that's a direct reimbursement grant. So
That's through the state or through the federal?
The YCP grant is actually a federal and state grant. It's a split. And our YTP is, in a consortium through the ESD, through South Coast ESD. But it's like, 23% federal and then 77% state. The breakdown changes a little bit every year, but
We have not successfully kept a person in that position to run all the way up to the full amount in a year. Every time we hire somebody, something has happened. So that number should probably be higher each of the last 2 years. We just haven't spent it either because people have left, family stuff, variety of reasons. So I don't think we've seen that person, that position live an entire academic year on this yet. So each of these actuals represents partial years of work. But we have to assume that we're gonna get a full year out of the person when we hire them. And try for that.
Well, that's your.
I know, I'm so sorry. I really, really tried. Maybe it was the time of day. Maybe my computer doesn't work appropriately at 1 a.m.
Don't blame them.
I can do what I want. I'm in the hot seat right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, one way to do it would be.
You must have gotten the updated version.
How long up on your phone?
That's why, that's what you're doing. Vice chair.
When Mr. Jones pointed out that something was wrong with the budget, then I updated that page and updated the page numbers and they were working and sent that to Charmin, so she must have gotten the updated.
So if you go to your phone and you have your email on your phone, you can cross-reference the page number. Should have just pointed this out. Cross-reference page number, if you give out page numbers, then you can actually switch over to your computer, you can.
The line's so small that it ends up across the room against the wall.
You should get one.
I think he's saying he does get one. And then
I
he throws
agree with
that.
that. Maybe like some days. Under 291, instructional materials placement.
Right, but I got page numbers on my computer.
Carrie, you said 291?
Yeah.
So that's gonna be page 165 is where it's on 291 start.
Okay.
65?
Yep.
Wait for it here.
Yeah, I know.
Here it is.
Okay, what am I looking at?
I'm wondering, I'm concerned here because we as the board, harp on our curriculum and stuff, and I think John and Gary are doing a really good job. However, I want to know if metal shop, wood shop, band, theater, and art is considered in the 291 fund for the material replacement.
Yes, any instructional program, and those are all instructional programs, would be able to use an instructional materials replacement. We typically don't use this fund unless we have to. We use the general fund, and for the expenditures, if we can, if we don't have money available in the general fund, then we use this. This is mostly a reserve fund that we are trying to build up for more lean years. But any instructional program, it's applicable for them to use this fund for.
Well, I want to make sure that everybody's aware because, I'm me personally as a board member, I'm getting a little frustrated with, our band teachers. Our band teachers going to some obligation look, no shot teacher. So it's based on paying for money, tools, instruments, going to boosters, going to read and stuff. Obviously there's some miscommunication because they should be using that, shouldn't they?
Well, there's an allowance for an amount of money that we have available to spend. So if they exceed that money that they're spending, there's some equity. We don't want to wipe out our whole reserve fund, but I can tell you that both the shop and the band, we have spent a significant amount of money in supplies and materials for this year. So if they're asking for more money, it's because they're wanting to do special projects on top of that. And John can probably speak to that more, but I know as approving expenditures in purchase orders, that there have been in both of those programs in excess, especially the shop program, because they have Perkins money and career pathways money that are both grant programs on top of what they get in the budget, in the regular budget for spending.
Yeah, we just bought a brand new CNC machine, for the shop, and is that Perkins or did we go at Esser on that one? And Esser was a viable resource for us for the last 2 years for some big purchases. So we've been putting money into those programs, and this fall in the band, we bought quite a bit of stuff, and as it continues to grow, that's one of those programs like technology just has to have a continual maintenance. If you can't buy the stuff one time every 5 years, you just have to plan for it to happen every year, because kids need wood and they need metal and they need sticks.
I wish somehow we could get that out to our community and to these organizations that are getting asked for the extra money, because they, you know, they're saying that we as a board, we as a district aren't, you know, supplying them what our kids need in those classes. No, that's totally wrong.
I actually had a conversation with the board of directors at Reef and said, save your money for 1 year, because as we spend down some of our extra money, do your fundraisers, grow your savings, because you don't need to spend any this year. And when they approach me about need, and haven't heard anything to that effect from like the athletic boosters, but it would be about the same. Well, we've been able to take care of our programs at the regular levels and into a little bit of excess these last 2 years. So if they've been saying that we're asking for money and they're and poor broke, that hasn't been the message we've been telling them.
Okay.
That's been the message that they've generated on their own.
Well, this didn't come from either one of those organizations, it came from a private citizen when they saw that we were, advertising the budget meeting.
Okay,
So she asked me that, because she's got a child in one of the classes, I guess.
gotcha.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to 299.
Okay. I mean, this is why I get paid the big bucks, right? I think of you as I'm sitting up here late and my eyes are crossing, I'm looking at the same spreadsheet over and over.
Why did that account go from 81,000 this year down to 21,000 for total?
What page are you on, or what?
This is my fund.
182.
You said 299, Terry?
Yeah.
Which one are you looking at?
So he is looking at 2021. Page 2021. Yeah.
I don't have any now.
You know, in the function,
Way towards the back.
What's the 1111?
1111.
Yeah.
So he's looking at primary instruction, K through 6.
Yes.
Where do you get 81,000?
Or are you talking about 1132?
Down in,
Oh,
under supplies.
1131.
Yeah.
Okay.
1131?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So,
There we go.
um,
So
I'm gonna-
299, student body, 1131.
so the student body fund is,
Up here on top.
is one of those funds that we budget so that we can get close to appropriations. Because on any given year, we don't know how much revenue we're going to have and how much money has expensed out. So these basically are just placeholders to allow us to spend money that we have in reserve for the different clubs and what we're going to get in. So while I reduced this one from 81,000 to 21,000, if you look at the next page at 1132, which is where most of our student body accounts should have been, it goes from 72,000 up to 117,903. So regardless of where these dollars are specifically in those line items, it's just an allowance for us to appropriate the money so that we can spend it in the way the clubs need it. The overall dollar amount represents a really generous estimate of what we have for reserve and what we would potentially get from donors.
And I think that's a really good way to think about it. What we're looking at is how we're gonna squirrel things away.
Yeah.
So that you can, you know, put them where you need them in the future and put them in the right place to be able to get the money where it needs to go.
Yes. So
So this isn't like actual cost.
No,
This
no.
is
yes,
what we're proposing so that we can.
and we're looking at, 30 or 40 different clubs of money that are just rolled up into one line item. So in the system, I have them all broken out and like they're individually account coded so that each club we can look and see how much money they have individually. But we don't, it would be 100 pages just for student body if we broke it out by each individual club like that.
Could you, like, make a mistake next time you look at my OSET money?
Sure. Yeah.
So
Well, that answers my
remember,
next question on the other one.
Carrie, remember, if we don't put it in the budget someplace, then we have to have a special budget meeting.
Supplemental.
A supplemental budget meeting, middle of the year, much more difficult process. And because of the timeline, if the money is here and budgeted, we follow a requisition process to get things spent and on students on time. If we have to wait for a supplemental budget meeting to advertise, potentially as much as a month to have a meeting, and then to maybe get approval, and then to do the purchasing, we could be 45 days behind the purchase of needing to get something done. So putting things in the budget, even sometimes if they're a bit pie in the sky, best case scenario gives us the authority to operate the day-to-day stuff at the right time without that supplemental budget. So part of this is putting things out there for us to have a hope and prayer on.
Yeah. Meet legal requirements. It's a spending plan based on estimates. It's not a true, these are the exact dollars we're going to have in and out.
What happens if you don't get your proposed revenue in?
And yet spend it.
I know, but that's the question is,
And that's why we have to work all the time and paying attention. If the money isn't there, we don't know where it's coming from, we don't spend it. But this group with this document gives us the authority. If we hit that point and the money comes in, we can continue to spend it on the kids in a timely manner. But we're always watching and we give a report to the board every month. What are the actuals
Okay, yeah.
for the past month? The board has some 30-day relevance to where we're at. Rachel and I are talking, hey, John, we got a problem all the time. Yeah. Or, hey, we're good.
And they're really good at doing that. There are a lot of systems. There are a lot of systems put in place to help us understand the board meetings, make it more clear as time actually in real time. It's much more, I think it's much more understandable than sort of theoretical.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
Yeah, it's hard to understand.
We're budgeting something that we won't see the money on for 6 months at the earliest. And a year after that, we're trying to guess where this is gonna go. This school funding is so genuinely difficult to do. And so pull a rabbit out of a hat. I mean, if the governor and Ways and Means come in at 10.3, all this work at 9.9, it's like, that would be a good thing to have happen, but we're not going to realize that until we budget again next year.
But on the other hand, then if you receive more revenue than you anticipated, you still can't spend it though.
If more than 10%, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, so if and even if it's more than 10%, we can do a supplemental budget. So if we receive it, by law, you can do a supplemental budget for any unanticipated revenue that is from outside sources. So like if I fail to budget the beginning fund balance of a carryover, I can't do anything about the appropriations for that because it's not unanticipated. You need to pay attention to your cash flow and make sure that number's close. But if we get a grant and we budgeted $100,000 for it and the state comes back and says, oh no, we're gonna give you $245,000, then we can do a supplemental budget. If it's under 10%, it's just an easy resolution that the board passes. If it's over 10%, we have to have a more formal hearing about it. But either way, we can still add it in and appropriate it.
Where we lose on that is timeliness. If we need to spend something because the opportunity is now and we have to go through that whole process, we're gonna lose a lot of time, month and a half of school. Where if we've got it budgeted or anticipated or guessed correctly, we can keep things moving efficiently. Carrie had a question. I interrupted him to say something.
I think he said that I answered that question, so you didn't even have to ask it.
Didn't have to ask. That was my next question.
Oh, okay. Additional questions? Anything else? I covered the debt service fund, in my slide, so those are pretty self-explanatory, and then the capital projects are just the reserve for maintenance and large projects, and then our seismic fund, and then our scholarship fund.
With the budget, the state, decided that we're gonna have fewer students this year. And when, fortunately for us, we open up, by September, hopefully 192 new housing units. If we get that huge influx of, say, 45% of those are families with kids going to our school.
Mhm.
We'll stay back to the state and say, hey, guys.
Yep, absolutely.
That'd be a good thing.
Yep, so, that's one of the reasons why it's important for me to see enrollment, at the monthly board meetings, so I can kind of see where our trend is. And I'm looking at that every single month. If we're trending where it's a big swing, whether it's down or up over 10 students, then I contact, well, it was Adam Prine. I can't remember the lady's name. She just took over the state school fund, but then I can contact them and say, hey, I need to do an adjustment to my estimate of membership and revenue. And then if they get enough changes or the changes are significant enough, then they will rebalance the state school fund and send out a new estimate for us.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Rob. Give them a call, kind of give us an idea, how they're gonna advertise those family units.
Yeah.
Get an idea of what we can foresee in that.
Yeah, that one could be a big one. If that, seeing that makes me anticipate a supplemental budget this year of some kind, which won't be a bad thing. I've done them before, so, it is what it is. But we just want to get off.
Possible to do that supplemental budget before we actually need it.
No, because we have to base it on good faith. So if we don't have a new state school fund estimate, then we wouldn't have any good faith to know what that dollar amount is or what that enrollment would be.
You couldn't fall back on how it was 15 years ago.
No, yeah, that would make me really uncomfortable. Let's say that. I like to have a little bit of a close idea.
Not only do you get a headline for that, the news cameras are in your face.
Yeah. I know my first piece of advice when I became a business manager 10 years ago was you don't ever want to be above the fold on the front page. And so I've worked really hard to stay out of that.
Well, I don't got nothing anymore, so they can't take that away. When they got to get these. And very back to me, that was a pretty easy,
Looking for the agenda to see him. People church.
It's probably easier there to go past it.
High school. That's I think they wait till they all go. And it's, you're the business manager just for the school district parking work.
I am the CFO for South Coast CSD and we contract with Reedsport for business services. So I'm assigned as the business manager for the district as well.
There's a little more to that history though. She was our business manager assigned to us 5 years ago when I got here. Was so good at her job, got promoted to the Douglas DSD to be their top person. Kept her eyes on us in transitioning her person. When she went to South Coast DSD, we stayed with her because she knows our books inside out and has done a great job. And worked for 5 straight years. So yes, she's the CFO, but she has been on top of us squarely since I've been here.
Oh, yeah. The hours that I've been putting in, that 13.20 minimum wage is starting to look good.
Yeah.
I love it. I love being here. I love being with the district and you know, seeing the students at the board meetings and I don't get that at the ESD anymore, so I just, well, thank you. I do miss being a teacher, so anytime I get engagement with students, it's great.
So should we start jumping up and down our chairs and
Nope.
holler in?
You can. So is there any further discussion on the budget, or are we thinking that we need to move to a second meeting, or are we thinking we can wrap it up? What is?
I think we can wrap it up
Call to action?
right tonight.
So, I gave each of you a proposed budget committee motions. So, at Karen's request, when she is ready, then she can, open the floor for motions. Or,
And you need both of these motions made?
yes, separately.
Made
Two
second.
motions.
You need one of these for everybody?
No.
Okay, just need one.
Yeah, you need to propose and read motion one, and someone will second, and then we need to propose and read number two, and someone will second it.
I do.
Anybody.
Somebody else, yeah.
You can just call for a motion. You just call for a motion. Yeah.
You just have to say it.
I got it.
There you go.
You have to read it.
Oh, well, I thought somebody was doing it. Okay, you can say it. Okay.
Yes,
I
she's calling for a motion. Yeah.
move to approve the Douglas County School District 105 Freeport School District budget for the 23-24 fiscal year ending June 30th, 24, in the appropriation amount of $18,108,898 and appropriate ending fund balance amount of $1,250,398 for the total budget of $19,359,020 or $359,296.
It's a mouthful.
Yes.
It's a mouthful.
So I have a question.
Okay.
Where did that number come from? Because that wasn't a number that's on this proposed here. We had 10,000.
The budget totals at the end of the budget should have that $19 million on it. On the very last page.
Very, very last.
I have another question.
Okay.
Was there any community comment on this computer before we did this?
Yeah, last
Do
page.
we have any community comment or any community participants at all?
I see that. They've been talking about 1,000.
Sure.
10 million.
What's that?
They were talking 10 million.
Karen,
That was
all the.
General
seven-
fund.
Yeah,
That was their
751,
general fund budget.
That it's coming from.
the 100 is the first part, and then all the other funds
Okay, okay,
afterwards.
gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right.
No, it's good.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Carrie,
Carrie's got a second.
Carrie Jones.
You were.
Okay. So that's Karen, you just say all in favor?
All in favor, signify by raising your hand.
Carrie's
Opposed,
unanimous.
same sign.
Huh?
Motion passed. I'd like to hear, motion for part two.
Madam Chairman, I move to approve the taxes provided for in the proposed budget of a permanent tax rate of $4.3788 per 1,000 assessed value for the general fund operations and a tax for bonded indebtedness in the amount of $682,342 for the general obligation bond series 2019 in the debt service fund.
Sheila Marshall,
Sheila seconds.
Sheila Marshall?
has a motion been made?
Yep.
Been seconded, all in favor, signify by the raising of the hand. Any opposition? Motion passed.
HAM&ER.
Yeah. Yes.
Budget committee chair, you'll sign that one, please.
This is.
So I'm ready to go on this summer. There's also a picture somewhere.
It's got the town.
Yeah. That sounds like,
Charmin's.
yeah, the kids are going to Hawaii.
She was asking.
And they want us to know. No.
Oh, okay.
Okay. My mom take care of that. Go take care of it. So, their mom and dad, Jeff's mom and dad's.
You want me to check on this? I mean, that has happened. But the community, or I guess it's-
So have a good time.
Oh, yeah.
Is this going on to you now?
Sure, yeah, and then I'll put that through.
They call me, her class.
So you can keep it. if you want.
Yes, you're worried about the shark.
Yeah, so it's on call.
Rachel,
I was gonna send her a
like.
picture of the shark. I didn't know it was a shark. And I asked him, he was coming in speed. He was a picture right now. This thing, he was pretty trying to.
This is the total of any of the 2,000 funds.
I thought-
So all of them.
That's what I think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's crazy out there. I jumped in the water like 2 years ago with Amanda's family. First thing I looked down to see is about a shark underneath me.
No. You walk on water? Yeah, I bet you did.
All right, meeting adjourned.
Let's go.
Whenever you're ready.
It's done.
Good job, Karen. Good job, Karen.
You should,
Pretty cool. I imagine.